Hospitals requiring inhaled nitric oxide therapy for patients now have a convenient, easy-to-use delivery system from Praxair. Through this video series, we will be discussing the NOxBOXi delivery system and NOxEvent nitric oxide gas for inhalation, including NOxEvent's use and risks. Before using the NOxBOXi system, it's important that you be trained in its use. You must read and understand the detailed operating and safety instructions found in the NOxBOXi and NOxMixer technical guide, including all inserts or amendments. Maintenance and repair should only be performed by a fully qualified and trained technician. The content of this video is intended to provide general information only. Read and always refer to the latest NOxBOXi and NOxMixer technical guide for specific information, procedures, instructions, recommendations, and troubleshooting. In the event of any inconsistency between the content of this video and the NOxBOXi and NOxMixer technical guide, the technical guide prevails. NOxEvent nitric oxide gas and the NOxBOXi system should only be used by hospital staff who are fully trained in the use of the device and drug, and always according to a physician's prescription. The information contained in this video is offered for use by technically qualified personnel at their discretion and risk without warranty of any kind. This video is modular in design for easy access to specific chapters of interest. Chapters include a brief introduction to inhaled nitric oxide therapy and the NOxBOXi device, a system overview, how to set up the NOxBOXi system, standby mode, how to set the dose, settings and alarm features, manual bagging procedures, emergency backup operation, how to safely shut down the system, monthly maintenance and calibration, and safe gas handling guidelines. Let's get started. Nitric oxide, also known as nitrogen oxide or nitrogen monoxide, contains one molecule of nitrogen and one of oxygen. It should not be confused with the anesthetic nitrous oxide, which contains two molecules of nitrogen and one of oxygen, or nitrogen dioxide, which contains two molecules of oxygen and one of nitrogen. NOxEvent is Praxair's nitric oxide product for inhalation applications. NOxEvent is a vasodilator indicated to improve oxygenation and reduce the need for extracorporeal membrane oxygenation in term and near-term neonates greater than 34 weeks gestation with hypoxic respiratory failure associated with clinical or echocardiographic evidence of pulmonary hypertension in conjunction with ventilatory support and other appropriate agents. Here is important safety information. NOxEvent is contraindicated in neonates dependent on right to left shunting of blood. Abrupt discontinuation of NOxEvent may lead to worsening oxygenation and increasing pulmonary artery pressure. Methemoglobin levels increase with the dose of NOxEvent. It can take 8 hours or more before steady-state methemoglobin levels are attained. If methemoglobin levels do not resolve with a decrease in dose or discontinuation of NOxEvent, additional therapy may be warranted to treat methemoglobinemia. Monitor nitrogen dioxide levels. Nitrogen dioxide may cause airway inflammation and damage to lung tissue. In patients with pre-existing left ventricular dysfunction, NOxEvent may increase pulmonary capillary wedge pressure, leading to pulmonary edema. The most common adverse reaction of NOxEvent is hypotension. Nitric oxide donor compounds may increase the risk of developing methemoglobinemia. Use only with a calibrated NOxBOXi delivery system operated by trained personnel. Only validated ventilator systems should be used in conjunction with NOxEvent. Please see the full prescribing information for additional important NOxEvent safety and risk information. The NOxBOXi device is a nitric oxide delivery system manufactured by NOxBOX Limited, a fully owned subsidiary of Praxair Incorporated. It's used with NOxEvent nitric oxide gas to deliver inhaled nitric oxide therapy. NOxBOX Limited has over 15 years of experience developing inhaled nitric oxide delivery devices and the NOxBOXi has been in commercialized use outside of the U.S. since 2013. The NOxBOXi system is a computerized closed-loop control system designed to deliver and monitor nitric oxide for use in inhaled nitric oxide therapy, encompassing both synchronous and continuous nitric oxide delivery modes. Some key features of the NOxBOXi system are a touchscreen display with a step-by-step guided interface, automatic cylinder switchover, and the ability to put the system in standby mode for up to 7 days. The consumables, also known as NOx kits, are used to connect the NOxBOXi device to delivery systems such as ventilators. They are completely disposable and come in pre-packaged kits with everything needed to get started. The NOxBOXi system displays real-time nitric oxide, nitrogen dioxide, and oxygen concentrations. The system also has many safety features, including automatically adjusting high and low nitric oxide alarms when the dose of inhaled nitric oxide is changed, separate nitric oxide and nitrogen dioxide environmental monitors, and numerous alarms. The NOxBOXi system delivers inhaled nitric oxide therapy efficiently. It combines the monitoring and delivery of the inhaled gas in one system. It's compact and lightweight. Purging the system is quick and easy. It may be used with both invasive and non-invasive ventilation and is compatible with many ventilator systems. Consult the technical guide for a list of validated ventilator systems. The NOxBOXi system also comes equipped with both intelligent and manual mode options, so therapy can be delivered manually in case of a power or system failure. The NOxBOXi system collects usage data, including a full alarm history for up to 2 years of use, which can be downloaded via USB. The NOxBOXi device is a computerized closed-loop control system. The key parts of the system include the NOx flow sensor, the sample line, and the main head unit of the device. The NOx flow sensor is attached in line with the inspiratory limb of the breathing circuit. The patient sample line, connected by a lure port just before the patient Y piece, allows the NOxBOXi system to sample inspiratory gases. The NOx flow sensor and the patient sample line, combined with the device's internal sensors, detect the ventilator flow rate and nitric oxide concentration. The NOxBOXi system then automatically injects the appropriate flow of nitric oxide gas into the ventilator breathing circuit to maintain the set dose of nitric oxide therapy. The delivery of this dose is automatically synchronized with the inspiratory cycle of the ventilator. Nitrogen dioxide and oxygen concentrations are also monitored by the NOxBOXi system to ensure appropriate levels during therapy. The system provides audible and visual alerts for many unexpected operating conditions, including nitric oxide, nitrogen dioxide, or oxygen levels outside of user-selected concentration limits, or whenever the nitric oxide dose setting is changed by the user. Refer to the technical guide for complete details on all alerts. The standalone device is mounted on a mobile cart for ease of use. The cart has lockable wheels, a basket, and holders for up to 2 cylinders of NOxVent nitric oxide gas. An oxygen cylinder can also be placed on the cart if a wall source of oxygen is not available. The NOxBOXi device has a convenient carrying handle, and the clamp can also be easily attached to a pole or device for use in transport situations. On the front of the NOxBOXi device to the left is the NOx mixer, which includes an oxygen flow meter and a mixed oxygen and nitric oxide outlet port. The main head unit contains a touchscreen display with an easy-to-read interface that guides the user through the setup procedure step by step. The NOxBOXi system can be operated in either intelligent or non-intelligent manual mode with the turn of a knob. Both options are available on the same unit. The NOxBOXi device is attached to the breathing circuit with connections on the side, including the NOx flow sensor line, the nitric oxide gas dose line, and the sample line coming from the patient. There's also a water trap bowl to collect condensation, which must be emptied after use. At the back of the NOx mixer, there is an inlet port for connecting the oxygen supply. There are also 2 inlets for the connection of 2 nitric oxide gas cylinder supply lines. If two full cylinders of NOx nitric oxide gas are attached and open, when the first cylinder depletes, the system will automatically switch over to the remaining full cylinder for uninterrupted treatment. There is also a system on-off button and a needle port to purge the system. The NOxBOXi device should be attached to an AC power source at all times, even while in storage. It comes with an internal backup battery that will provide up to 4 hours of operation if the AC power is interrupted. When plugged into the AC power, a blue LED light comes on to indicate that the NOxBOXi internal battery is charging, which dims once it's fully charged. The NOxBOXi system can provide past alarm history and data logs for up to 2 years' use, which can be downloaded at any time via the USB port on the back of the unit. The system comes with portable environmental monitors which are recommended when the unit is in use to help maintain a safe atmosphere in the room. Before using the NOxBOXi system, it's important that you be trained in its use. You must read and understand the detailed operating and safety instructions found in the NOxBOXi and NOxMixer technical guide, including all inserts or amendments. NOxVent, nitric oxide gas for inhalation, and the NOxBOXi system should only be used by hospital staff who are fully trained in the use of the drug and device and always according to a physician's prescription. Pressurized gas must be handled with care. Proper safety practices, which are found in the technical guide, must be followed at all times. The NOxBOXi delivery system is easy to use. The on-screen step-by-step guide leads the operator through the setup procedure. Before attaching it to a patient, you must perform a series of tests to ensure that the system is in proper working order. Ensure that the wheels are locked during setup and while in use. Tighten the rail mount bracket to the cart to secure the device. Check that the monitor end of the power cord is plugged tightly into the power socket located at the rear of the monitor. It should be pushed in until the locking mechanism clicks. Connect the AC cord of the power supply to a hospital-grade electrical outlet. The AC power must be connected at all times, especially when in storage. The blue LED illuminates, indicating that the NOxBOXi device is charging. Once fully charged, it will dim. Secure each cylinder to the cart using the straps provided. Each procedure requires the use of a NOx kit, a single patient-use kit that must be discarded after each use. There are 4 sizes to choose from: 10, 12, 15, and 22 millimeter, depending on your ventilator patient circuit. Each NOx kit contains a NOx flow sensor accessory used to detect the ventilator flow and inject NOxVent nitric oxide gas into the ventilator inspiratory limb, an adapter to connect the NOx flow sensor to a humidifier or the inspiratory limb, a sample line used to sample the inspiratory limb gases, a syringe used to remove moisture from the water trap, a hydrophobic filter used to prevent moisture from entering the NOxBOXi device, and connectors for connecting the sample line to the inspiratory limb and the NOx flow sensor for when a humidifier is not present, such as when an HME or heat and moisture exchanger is being used. These connectors are different in each NOx kit, specific to the patient breathing circuit. A NOxBOXi test kit is also provided to allow you to test the system before it's connected to a patient. The sample test kit can be used multiple times as it does not come into contact with contaminated components. Each system test kit is supplied with a NOx flow sensor accessory and a sample line. These components can be reused and should be removed after testing and stored for continued use. The test kit also includes approximately 1 meter of 22 millimeter corrugated tubing and a selection of connectors and tubing for assembly. Follow the instructions in the technical guide to assemble the test kit prior to use. Additional optional consumables include a one-way valve for HFO or high-frequency oscillatory ventilation, a nebulizer filter for sampling gases during nebulizer use, and a manual bag sample adapter for sampling if you are manually bagging. The NOxBOXi system comes equipped with 2 environmental monitors which detect ambient levels of both nitric oxide and nitrogen dioxide to make sure they are within preset safety limits. Before using the system, check that the monitors are turned on and calibrated. They require a daily zero calibration, which is completed with a power on-off cycle. To test the system, first connect the oxygen. The NOx mixer oxygen hose has a hand-tightened NIST connection and should be connected in preparation for transport and manual bagging scenarios. Power on the device by briefly pressing the green power button. The NOxBOXi system will now perform a basic system check and sensor zero test to establish a baseline reading for the sensors. These self-test procedures take up to 2 minutes to complete. Once the sensor zero test has completed, the home screen will be displayed. Here we can see information regarding the monthly calibrations, when they were last performed and when they are due. If a calibration is overdue, a warning notification will appear when attempting to set up the device to remind you that service is due. There are 4 options on the home screen. Service Engineer, which is a password-protected area accessible only by Level 2 trained personnel to conduct monthly calibrations, change settings, and download the system history logs. Skip to Dose, which is to be used in emergencies where the system test will be skipped, not recommended for typical use. Skip to System Test to be used by frequent users who are already well trained in the setup process. And Step-by-Step Guide, a more in-depth process for trained but infrequent users which will guide the user through the full setup. For this demonstration, we'll follow the step-by-step guide. The first screen instructs you to confirm that the mode selection valve is in the 12 o'clock position for intelligent mode. If it's not, the device will not pass subsequent leak tests and the system test. The next step instructs you to check that the cart brakes are enabled and asks you to select whether 1 or 2 NOxEvent nitric oxide gas supply cylinders are being used. When using 2, the NOxBOXi system has an automatic changeover feature. When the first cylinder becomes depleted, the system will alarm and automatically switch to the alternate cylinder, provided it is connected with adequate pressure and the valve is open. For this demonstration, we will use 2 NOxEvent gas cylinders, one for in-use, the other in reserve. Both cylinders must be the same nitric oxide gas concentration, in this case, 800 parts per million. The next step is to confirm the nitric oxide gas concentration of the supply cylinder and the cylinder expiry date. This is very important, as an incorrect concentration entry may cause dose issues, including extended time to reach dose and potentially triggering high-low dose alarms. The supply concentration setting can only be modified by Level 2 trained personnel. Next, inspect the regulator you intend to connect to the NOxEvent gas cylinder, paying particular attention to the sealing O-ring, gauge, and body for signs of damage. If the regulator is damaged, do not use it. Contact your qualified service engineer or contact your Praxair representative. Once you're certain the parts are free from any damage, connect the nitric oxide supply hose to the regulator. When handling the regulator, take care not to lift it from the quick connector as it may drop and be damaged. Next, connect the nitric oxide supply regulator to the cylinder thread, keeping the regulator gauge clearly visible. It's completely hand-tightened. Tools are not required and should not be used. When the regulator is loose, the body will move. When it's fully tightened, the body will be secure. Now connect the nitric oxide supply hose to port number 1 on the back of the NOxBOXi device. If you are using 2 NOxEvent gas cylinders, it's very important to connect cylinder number 1 to port number 1 and cylinder number 2 to port number 2, so it is clear which cylinder is empty and which is full. Now, open the cylinder valve slowly. If you hear a sudden rush of gas or a leak, close the valve immediately. Check the connection for proper placement. Check the regulator gauge connected to cylinder 1 and confirm that the pressure gauge indicates more than 20 bar or 290 psi of pressure as marked in the red area. The regulator's minimum working pressure is 20 bar or 290 psi. If the cylinder pressure is lower, there may not be adequate pressure to start therapy. An automatic pressure test will now confirm you've connected the cylinder to port 1 and adequate pressure is detected. Now conduct a brief leak test. First, check to make sure the device is in intelligent mode at the 12 o'clock position. Simply close the cylinder valve fully and observe the regulator gauge for 30 seconds. It should not move. If the needle shows a decrease in pressure, it could indicate a leak. Follow the basic on-screen troubleshooting steps or consult the technical guide to check for leaks, then retest the system. If the leak test continues to fail, do not use the device. Take it out of service immediately and notify your qualified service engineer or contact your Praxair representative. At this point, if you are using two NOxEvent gas cylinders, you would now be taken through the same setup process and conduct the same test on the second cylinder. With the leak test now complete, we are ready to connect the NOx kit for the system test. Of the 4 available, select the NOx kit appropriate to the prescribed setting and remove the NOx flow sensor, the accessory device that performs flow detection and injects nitric oxide into the breathing circuit. Make sure there are no visible signs of damage and that the O-rings are properly seated without any sign of damage or distortion. Make sure to orientate the NOx flow in the proper direction with the arrow always pointing in the direction of flow to the patient. You'll notice the 3 ports on the side of the NOxBOXi device are different sizes to avoid connection to the wrong port. First, connect the nitric oxide dose line to the nitric oxide outlet port on the NOxBOXi device by rotating the male spin lure clockwise to secure. Next, connect the twin-port flow detection connector to the NOxBOXi socket. Ensure the green line is at the top and press the locking button for easy installation. Once installed, allow the locking mechanism to secure the connector and gently tug the tubing to make sure it's secure. Next, connect the hydrophobic filter from the NOx kit. Again, both connections are different sizes to avoid connecting them incorrectly. Connect the green male spin lure by rotating clockwise onto the hydrophobic filter. Now push the quick connect fitting into the water trap socket. Finally, connect the sample line to the water trap. Simply rotate the female lure lock clockwise to secure. Take care not to over-tighten. Using the supplied test kit, connect the free end of the sample line to the lure sample port on the kit. Next, connect the NOx flow to the opposite end of the system test kit, making sure the green arrow is pointing toward the sample line. You should have a similar configuration as the illustration displayed on the NOxBOXi device screen. Now open the NOxEvent nitric oxide gas cylinder, which has remained closed during the leak test performed earlier. If you are using 2 cylinders, open them both at this time. Connect 10 liters per minute of 100% oxygen to the NOx flow using the test kit tubing. The NOx mixer can be used to supply 100% oxygen for this purpose. Simply connect one end of the tubing to the NOx mixer outlet, and the other to the open end of the NOx flow as illustrated on the display. Make sure your oxygen source is connected to the back of the NOx mixer system and rotate the NOx mixer oxygen flow control counterclockwise to set the oxygen flow to 10 liters per minute. At this point, the NOxBOXi device will perform an automatic system test to verify that the system and all consumables are fully functional. This may take 3 to 5 minutes to complete. The NOxBOXi system is first confirming that it can accurately detect the ventilator flow rate. Then, the nitric oxide gas travels through the circuit and is sampled back to the NOxBOXi device via the sample line. The NOxBOXi system then confirms the correct dose is present. Once the system test is completed successfully, you will see 3 green check marks on the screen, at which point you will have 30 minutes to set a dose. If you're not connecting to a patient right away, the NOxBOXi system should be placed in standby mode. If any of the tests fail, check for issues in the test circuit setup and repeat the test. If issues persist, contact Praxair to replace the NOxBOXi system. Once all tests have been successfully completed, you can disconnect the test circuit and complete the setup. Rotate the NOx mixer oxygen flow control clockwise to turn off the oxygen flow. Disconnect the oxygen tubing from the NOx mixer outlet and NOx flow and place back in the test kit packaging for safekeeping. The corrugated tubing supplied with the system test kit is no longer needed and should also be disconnected from the NOx flow and sample line. and placed back in the test kit for safekeeping. Now you are ready to start therapy and set the dose or place the NOxBOXi system in standby mode. Once the NOxBOXi system has been properly set up and the tests have been successfully completed, you can enable standby mode or set the dose and alarms to start therapy. This chapter will review the standby mode. If the machine is not being put into service immediately, standby mode should be enabled until you are ready to use it. To enter standby mode, we start by setting the dose to 0 parts per million. A message will appear on the display alerting you that this will stop treatment. Press the arrow to continue with this setting for standby mode. Every time you set or change the dose, you must follow the on-screen sequence of confirming the dose. A dose and alarm summary appears, and default alarm limits are set every time the delivery dose is changed. These individual alarms can be modified if desired. Instructions for modifying alarms can be found in Chapter 5 of this video and also in the technical guide. One final message appears on screen that must be confirmed by pressing the check mark before the new dose setting will be recognized. Next, disconnect and purge the nitric oxide gas supply hoses. Close the cylinder valves, then disconnect the cylinder hoses from the ports on the back of the NOxBOXi device. Push the open end of the hose onto the purge needle and observe the regulator gauge, which should return to 0 once the hose is purged. Reset the valve by pulling back on the collar until you hear a click and reconnect the hose, making sure you connect cylinder 1 to port 1 and cylinder 2 to port 2. This process reduces possible nitrogen dioxide formation during storage. If you don't see the gauge return to 0 when you purge and you can hear gas flowing, simply reset the valve by pulling the collar back until you hear a click and try to purge again. If the cylinders are not closed, disconnected, and the lines purged, the system will display a vent idle alarm. Follow the on-screen steps to end this alarm. The NOxBOXi system can be left in standby mode for up to 7 days. The system will alert for a sensor 0 test every 24 hours. The sensor 0 test is automatic and simply requires acceptance of an on-screen notification, at which point it resets to alarm again in another 24 hours. When setting the dose, always follow the setting prescribed by the attending physician. First, confirm that you have the correct size NOx kit for the ventilator patient circuit, then connect the NOx flow sensor to the inspiratory limb of the ventilator. Only validated ventilator systems should be used in conjunction with the NOxBOXi system. This circuit contains a humidifier with 22 mm connections, so we'll need to use a connector from the NOx kit. Connect the 15 mm end of the NOx flow connector to the NOx flow sensor with the green arrow pointing towards the connector. Quickly disconnect the tubing that connects the ventilator inspiratory limb to the dry side of the humidifier and place the NOx flow on the humidifier with the green arrow pointing into it. Quickly place the tubing from the ventilator onto the open end of the NOx flow. Make sure the green arrow points in the direction of flow towards the patient. If the circuit does not contain a humidifier, for example, if an HME is being used, or if alternative connections are required, appropriate size connections are supplied within the NOx kit. Now connect the sample line. Select the appropriate sample adapter from the NOx kit and insert the lure lock elbow. Connect the free end of the sample line to the lure lock elbow and quickly insert the sample adapter into the inspiratory limb of the ventilator patient circuit, ideally 15 to 30 centimeters from the patient. Now open the cylinder valves to exit standby mode. If you are using 2 cylinders, it's recommended to open cylinder 1 first. The NOxBOXi may alarm momentarily as the cylinder pressure is detected. Now that the patient circuit is ready, we can set the dose. In standby mode, the current nitric oxide dose will be set at 0.0 parts per million. To set the dose, exit standby mode by pressing the pencil. Using the numeric keypad, enter the dose. For this demonstration, we will enter a dose of 20 parts per million. As before, we are asked to confirm the dose. The dose summary is now displayed with default alarm values depending on the selected dose concentration. There is information on how to change the default alarm values in Chapter 6, Settings and Alarms. A final confirmation is required to start the new dose of 20 parts per million. NOx event doses greater than 20 parts per million are not recommended. Any prescribed dose greater than 20 parts per million requires a secondary confirmation. A screen will appear, prompting the user to confirm the dose. Upon final confirmation of the dose, the main therapy screen returns, displaying the new dose concentration. Changing the dose can take up to 3 minutes, depending on ventilator flow rate. The less flow, the longer it takes the nitric oxide control system to settle to the selected dose. Note that alarms are automatically muted for the first 30 seconds after a dose change. Once stable, the NOxBOXi system will continue to deliver the selected concentration in sync with the ventilator inspiratory flow pattern. The main therapy monitoring screen displays the real-time monitored concentrations of nitric oxide, nitrogen dioxide, and oxygen as detected by the sample line and the high and low level alarms. The high alarms will trigger if the monitored concentration of that gas is higher than the high alarm value set, and the low alarms trigger when the sample reading is lower than the low value alarm set. There are 2 timers. The current dose time indicates the cumulative amount of time in minutes, hours, and days that the NOxBOXi system has been delivering the current set dose, including 0 if the unit has been in standby mode. The elapsed treatment time is the amount of time the NOxBOXi system has been delivering any concentration of nitric oxide above 0 parts per million in minutes, hours, and days. This timer will pause when the dose is set to 0 parts per million. The display also indicates how many supply cylinders are connected and if they are open and have adequate pressure. Green indicates regulator output over approximately 4.0 bar or 58 psi. Red indicates regulator output under approximately 4.0 bar or 58 psi. There's also a reminder displayed of the NOx event nitric oxide gas cylinder concentration should a cylinder require replacement during therapy. At the bottom of the NOxBOXi device screen, there are a series of touch tabs that will allow you to access various features of the device throughout the therapy. Here you will see 3 tabs for Monitor, Alarms, and Settings. The Monitor tab is the default main therapy screen. But if you select the Alarms tab, you'll see the most recent alarms that have triggered during the current therapy. At most, 20 alarms appear. You'll see a description of the alarm, the date and the time when the alarm was triggered, and when it was resolved, which will stay blank if the alarm is still active. You can scroll up and down the alarm history using the arrows on the right of the screen. There are 2 alarm colors, red and amber. Red indicates a high priority alarm for low or high levels of nitric oxide, nitrogen dioxide, or oxygen, when the monitored gas levels are lower or higher than the alarm set points. Nitric oxide supply critical, when the cylinder of nitric oxide is connected and the content is running critically low, or 2 cylinders are connected and the content in both is running critically low. Sample line block, when the sampling circuit has an occlusion. Water trap full, when the water trap has excess moisture and requires emptying. Vent idle, when the NOx flow cannot detect the flow of ventilator gases. And critical delivery fault, when the NOxBOXi system cannot deliver the desired concentration of NOx event nitric oxide gas in the intelligent mode. An amber-colored alarm indicates a medium priority alarm including cylinder 1 or 2 low, when cylinders are connected and the content is running critically low. Manual override, when the manual override switch is in manual mode. And 0 calibration overdue, to indicate the unit requires a 0 calibration. The alarms will be in the order of the most recent at the top. However, a red alarm will prioritize in position ahead of an amber alarm. Also note that alarms can be triggered in the standby mode. These alarms will clear when the device is powered off, but will be stored in the memory of the device and can be downloaded by Level 2 trained personnel by inserting a USB stick into the port on the back of the device. When setting a dose, default alarm limits will appear and can be changed as necessary. To modify the default alarm setting, delete the current entry using the on-screen delete key and enter a number greater than the selected dose concentration. Note that the NOxBOXi system will not accept a nitric oxide high alarm value lower than the current dose concentration. The system will prompt you to confirm the new nitric oxide high alarm value. The alarm summary has now been updated with the new value. On the monitor screen, there is also the Settings tab, where you access adjustable settings during therapy. These include the system language, the sensor 0, which you can press at any time to run a test to reset the 24-hour timer, an option to lock the screen for cleaning purposes, etc., a volume control to set the system louder or quieter, and a brightness setting to make the display brighter or dimmer. The manual override calculator will take you to a screen where you can calculate your NOx mixer settings for manual bagging or emergency purposes. You can change the NOxBOXi system operation from intelligent mode to manual mode with the turn of a switch. Here are the steps to take for manual bagging. First, make sure the oxygen hose is connected to both the NOx mixer and an oxygen supply, either a wall outlet or cylinder. Always connect the hose to the NOx mixer before connecting it to the oxygen supply. Connect your manual bag to the NOx mixer outlet barb using the sample adapter if necessary. Set the oxygen flow on the NOx mixer to the desired flow rate using the middle of the float at eye level. Note, when the manual override switch is in the intelligent or 12 o'clock position, only oxygen will flow from the NOx mixer. Now go to the Settings tab and select the manual override calculator and use the on-screen guide to calculate the nitric oxide dose. Using the up-down keys, set the vent flow on the manual override calculator to the NOx mixer oxygen flow rate. To start bagging, turn the mode selection valve to manual mode in the horizontal or 3 o'clock position. Remove the sample line from the ventilator circuit and attach it to the manual bagging sample adapter to allow sampling and on-screen monitoring of nitric oxide, nitrogen dioxide, and oxygen concentrations during bagging. When bagging has been completed, remove the sample line and attach it back to the sample port in the ventilator patient circuit. To revert back to intelligent delivery, turn the NOxBOXi mode selection valve to the intelligent delivery mode by turning to the vertical or 12 o'clock position. In an emergency situation where the NOxBOXi system cannot be operated properly, for example due to power failure or the screen is suddenly damaged, the emergency backup mode can be used. First, make sure the NOx mixer oxygen flow meter is set to 0, rotated fully clockwise. If possible, disconnect the NOx mixer oxygen hose from the supply. Note the total ventilator flow rate, minute volume plus bias flow for some ventilators. Note the NOx event nitric oxide gas supply cylinder concentration. To calculate the correct nitric oxide dose, refer to the printed dose charts found in the quick reference guide, the technical guide, or use the provided dosing wheel. Use the appropriate dose chart for the nitric oxide cylinder concentration. In this case, we are using 800 parts per million. Select the total ventilator flow rate and view the dose options. Set the nitric oxide flow control valve to the appropriate flow setting to achieve the required dose. Remove the NOx kit emergency backup kit from its packaging and assemble the lure connection. Connect the tubing to the NOx mixer outlet barb. Remove the nitric oxide dose line from the port on the NOxBOXi device and connect it to the emergency tubing using the lure lock. Rotate the mode selection valve to the manual override mode for bagging, emergency backup, or neopuff circuit use. Note, monitored readings in emergency backup mode may not be accurate or visible. The emergency backup mode is intended for short-term use only while the unit is replaced or the power issue is resolved. Once the therapy has concluded, the NOxBOXi system will need to be decommissioned for storage. Here's how to shut the system down. Turn off the system by holding down the green power button until the system shutdown confirmation is displayed. Do not hold the green power button down for more than 3 seconds or damage to the NOxBOXi device could occur. A message will appear on the screen asking you to confirm the shutdown. Follow the on-screen instructions starting with closing the NOx event gas cylinder valves. Disconnect and purge the nitric oxide gas supply lines. You should always observe the cylinder regulator gauge when you purge. If the needle remains stationary, pull back the collar on the nitric oxide supply line to reset the valve and check to make sure the cylinder valve is fully closed. Once the cylinder regulator indicates 0 bar or PSI, disconnect the regulator from the cylinder for storage. Next, disconnect and dispose of the single patient consumables, starting with the sample line and hydrophobic filter. Disconnect the NOx flow by rotating the dose line lure counterclockwise. Press the button underneath the twin port connector and pull to remove. Using the syringe provided, drain any moisture from the water trap. The water trap should be unscrewed and cleaned using alcohol-free cleaning wipes. It is not autoclavable. Perform one last visual inspection, checking to make sure all the hoses and consumable items have been properly disconnected and discarded. If you plan to move the NOxBOXi system to another location, disconnect the power and the wall source oxygen if used. Remember to always reconnect the power plug to the wall once the NOxBOXi system has been relocated. The backup battery has up to 4 hours of backup charge when fully charged. Ensure all prompts are followed to complete the power off system shutdown. To ensure optimum functionality and accuracy, the NOxBOXi device requires monthly calibration of the internal sensors, the pump, and the vent flow. Calibration must only be performed by a trained Level 2 technician. Access to the calibration function is password protected to ensure that adequate training has been completed before attempting to calibrate the device. In order to perform the monthly calibration on the NOxBOXi system, you will need these items: a supply of 100% oxygen from either a wall source or a cylinder with a 10 liters per minute flow setting, a NOxBOXi test kit, including the NOx flow, sample line, and hydrophobic filter, a NOxBOXi cal kit which contains the calibration gases of 25 parts per million nitric oxide and 10 parts per million nitrogen dioxide, plus a NoxyCal stainless steel regulator, and a pump flow meter pump calibration flow meter. To begin calibrating, ensure the NOxBOXi device is connected to the main power. Power the system on by pressing the green button on the back. Allow the startup and sensor 0 test sequence to complete. Once the home screen is displayed, you can see the calibration log showing when the calibrations were last performed and when they're due next. To perform a calibration, select Service Engineer. As this area is password protected, you must enter your Service Engineer passcode to continue. Then press Next. Along the bottom of the screen, there are 3 tabs: Settings, Calibration, and System Log. Select Calibrations to view the calibrations. You will again see the calibration history. Using the up-down arrows on the right, you can scroll through the entries. Below, you can also see the service items, when they were installed and when they're due for replacement. To perform the pump calibration, select the respective arrow for the pump calibration to start the procedure. Open the NOxBOXi test kit and connect the hydrophobic filter to the water trap. Next, connect the sample line to the water trap and pump flow meter. Ensure the pump flow meter is level with the guides provided. Using the on-screen up-down keys, adjust the count number until the pump flow meter float indicates 225 milliliters per minute. The count number is a reference point only and is not indicative of flow rate, voltage, or current. Once the pump flow meter indicates 225 milliliters per minute, press the on-screen check to accept the calibration. If you cannot achieve the desired flow, check to see if your connections are secured and that components, such as the sample line, are not damaged or blocked. If you still cannot achieve 225 milliliters per minute, contact your Praxair service representative. Leaving the pump flow meter connected, press the on-screen calibration tab to continue with the calibrations. Next, we will calibrate the sensor 0, which takes up to 2 minutes to perform. Press the on-screen arrow to continue. When the calibration starts, the pump flow meter should register 0 flow, indicating the internal solenoid is functioning correctly. If the pump flow meter does not indicate 0 flow, contact your Praxair service representative. Remove the pump flow meter from the sample line, place it back in storage, and press the on-screen calibration tab to continue with the calibrations. Next, we'll calibrate the nitric oxide and nitrogen dioxide sensors. The process is the same for each one. Let's start with calibrating the nitrogen dioxide sensor. Simply press the respective arrow to start. This calibration will take up to 3 minutes to complete. Press the arrow to continue. Verify the calibration gas cylinder content printed on the cylinder label. In this demonstration, we are confirming 9.8 parts per million nitrogen dioxide and confirming the expiry date is correct. Enter the concentration value stated on the cylinder and press the forward arrow to continue. Confirm the concentration entered is correct. Push the long open end of the calibration Y piece over the regulator output barb to connect. Rotate the regulator valve counterclockwise to ensure the valve is open. This helps prevent cylinder contamination. Before connecting the regulator to the cylinder, remove the cylinder dust cap and verify the sealing O-ring is in place and free from damage. Connect the regulator to the cylinder by screwing the cylinder clockwise into the regulator. Close the regulator valve as soon as you hear the gas flowing or see pressure indicated on the gauge, and continue to tighten the cylinder to the regulator fully. To complete the calibration, you must have pressure of at least 50 psi or more. If the cylinder pressure is lower than 50 psi, replace the cylinder. Ensure the hydrophobic filter and sample line used for the pump calibration are installed and connect the lure lock port of the calibration Y piece to the sample line lure. Open the regulator valve by turning counterclockwise and press the on-screen forward arrow to start calibration. Once the calibration is complete, you will see 3 green check marks on the screen indicating the calibration is successful. Close the regulator valve by turning clockwise. Then press the on-screen arrow to continue. If the calibration is unsuccessful, close the cylinder valve and press the on-screen arrow to continue. Troubleshooting steps will appear to assist you. If the calibration fails a second time, contact your Praxair service representative for assistance. Remove the cylinder from the regulator by rotating counterclockwise and replace the dust cap. Never leave the regulator connected to the cylinder during storage. Next, calibrate the nitric oxide sensor following the same procedure. Once both the nitrogen dioxide and nitric oxide calibrations are complete, remove the hydrophobic filter and place it into storage. Finally, to perform the vent flow calibration, press the on-screen calibration tab and select the respective arrow. Remove the NOx flow supplied in the NOxBOXi test kit and connect it to the NOxBOXi device. Remove the oxygen tubing from the test kit and connect it to the NOx flow using the supplied 22F adapter. Make sure the directional arrow is pointing toward the disconnected end. Connect the open end of the oxygen tubing to an oxygen source such as the NOx mixer outlet barb. It is not recommended to use preset numerical outlets such as integrated cylinder regulators unless a 10 liters per minute flow setting option is available. Set the oxygen flow rate to 10 liters per minute and press the on-screen arrow to continue. Once the calibration is successful, a notification will automatically display. Turn off the oxygen source and disconnect the NOx flow and oxygen tubing and place it in storage for future use. The NOxBOXi device has now been successfully calibrated. Log out of the Service Engineer area to return to the home screen and confirm the calibration log has been updated. It's important to remember that compressed gas cylinders can be extremely hazardous when misused or abused and can present a variety of hazards due to their pressure and/or content. Before using NOxVent nitric oxide gas for inhalation and the NOxBOXi system, please read and understand the full list of safety precautions found in the technical guide. Here are just a few compressed gas handling reminders and precautions. Compressed gases should only be handled by experienced and properly trained staff. Cylinders should be stored in accordance with all local, state, and municipal regulations and in compliance with appropriate standards, including, but not limited to, the Compressed Gas Association and the National Fire Protection Association. Gas cylinders should be stored upright where they will not fall over or be damaged by falling objects. Never store a cylinder in an elevated location because a fall could seriously damage the valve or the cylinder. If a cylinder is dropped or knocked over, check that components are not damaged and that the system connections remain secure. Always keep the cylinders and valves free from contact with oils, greases, flammables, and other contaminants. If you suspect a leak, turn the unit off immediately and isolate the unit. Contact your Praxair representative. Before removing the regulator from the cylinder, close the valve to release all pressure. Keep the cylinder valve closed at all times except when the cylinder is in active use. If a valve is hard to open, contact Praxair for instructions. Never attempt to repair or alter cylinders, valves, or safety relief devices yourself. Before using the NOxBOXi system, please read and understand all safety precautions as outlined in the technical guide. For additional safety and cautionary statements, refer to the cylinder gas instruction manuals and safety data sheets. That concludes our video training for the NOxBOXi delivery system. Please refer to the technical guide for more detailed information on how to safely set up and use the device. NOxVent, nitric oxide gas for inhalation, and the NOxBOXi system should only be used by hospitals that have received adequate training in the use of the drug and device and according to a physician's prescription. We're excited about this new Praxair respiratory offering and to provide hospitals with a comprehensive nitric oxide delivery system that is intelligent and easy to use. We hope you enjoy the convenience of the NOxBOXi system. It's one more example of the fine products and solutions Praxair Healthcare Services is proud to provide. Thanks for watching.